The Villani were dying. Ambassador Telly stood in the great crystal hall of her homeworld, watching the sky burn orange with enemy fire. Her thin wings hung low against her back, too heavy with grief to lift. Outside the tall windows, she could see the Krath warships, hundreds of them, black and sharp like the claws of some terrible beast. They had come 3 days ago, and already half of her beautiful world was gone. The Villani were not fighters. They had never been fighters. For 10,000 years, they had lived in peace, building towers of crystal and light, writing songs that could make other species weep with joy. They were small creatures with soft bodies and wings like colored glass. Their children were born as larvae, helpless and precious, kept safe in nursery pools, until they grew strong enough to walk. The Krath wanted those children. Telly had learned this terrible truth only yesterday. The Krath Dominion did not want their planet for its resources or its location. They wanted the Villani larvae. They wanted to harvest them, to feed on them. The thought made Telly's body shake with horror. "Ambassador," said her assistant, a young male named Gyu. His wings were trembling so badly he could barely stand. "The Galactic Council has responded to our distress call, and?" Telly asked, though she already knew the answer from the look on his face. "They offer their sympathy. They say they cannot interfere in Krath territorial claims. They say nothing useful," Telly finished. She turned away from him, looking back at the burning sky. "They will watch us die and write sad poems about it afterward." He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "There is one other option, Ambassador. One the Council did not mention." Telly looked at him. "Earth," Gyu said. "The humans." A cold feeling spread through Telly's body. Every species in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the monsters from the Deathworld, the planet where gravity crushed bones, where the very air could burn you from inside, where creatures killed each other for food and sport. The humans had crawled out of that nightmare and somehow survived. Somehow thrived. The Galactic Council kept them contained in their own star system, afraid of what might happen if they spread. Humans were not allowed to send military ships beyond their borders. They were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. "You want me to ask the monsters for help?" Telly asked. "I want you to ask anyone who might save our children," Gyu replied. His young eyes were hard with desperation. "The Council will not help. The Krath will not show mercy. What choice do we have?" Telly closed her eyes. She thought of the nursery pools, filled with thousands of larvae. She thought of mothers singing to their unborn children. She thought of the Krath soldiers marching closer every hour. "Send the signal," she said. The response came faster than she expected. The holographic projector in the center of the hall flickered to life, and a human face appeared. Telly had never seen a human before. She was surprised by how plain they looked. No wings, no exoskeleton, no bright colors. Just soft skin and 2 small eyes and a mouth that did not smile. The human was female, with short dark hair and a uniform covered in metals that Telly did not recognize. Her name appeared below her image. Admiral Yuna, United Earth Defense Coalition. "Ambassador Telly," the human said. Her voice was calm and flat, like stone. "We received your signal. Tell me what is happening." Telly told her everything. The Krath invasion, the dying cities, the children being taken. She spoke until her voice broke, and still she kept speaking, because stopping meant accepting that there was no hope. Admiral Yuna listened without interrupting. When Telly finished, the human was quiet for a long moment. "You understand," Yuna said finally, "that we cannot send a fleet. The Galactic Council has made it very clear that human military ships are not welcome beyond our borders." Telly's wings drooped. She had known this was coming. Even the monsters could not help them. However, Yuna continued, and something in her voice made Telly look up. The council said nothing about one ship. Or one soldier. One soldier? Telly repeated. She did not understand. Admiral, there are 40,000 Krath warriors on my planet. Their warlord has conquered 11 star systems. What can one soldier do? Admiral Yuna's face changed. It was a small change, just a tightening around her eyes, a slight shift in her jaw, but Telly felt something cold move through her blood. I am sending you a file, Yuna said. A personnel record. Read it carefully. The hologram flickered, and a new image appeared beside the Admiral. It was another human, a male this time, with dark eyes and a face that showed nothing at all. No anger. No fear. No emotion of any kind. He looked like a person who had forgotten how to feel. Below his image, Telly saw words in the human language. She could read only some of them, Captain Dawn, and below that, 2 more words she did not recognize. Berserker class. What is a berserker? Telly whispered. Admiral Yuna did not answer the question directly. Instead, she said, Captain Dahan will arrive in your system within 6 standard days. Give him whatever information he asks for. Then stay out of his way. But Admiral, you asked for help, Ambassador. You begged for it. Now help is coming. Yuna leaned closer to the camera, and her eyes were like dark ice. The Krath have never faced a human in combat before. They think they are predators. They think they are the most dangerous things in the galaxy. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Pray for your people, Ambassador. But do not pray for the Krath. After Captain Dawn is finished with them, even their gods will not recognize what remains. The transmission ended. Telly stood alone in the crystal hall, staring at the empty air where the human's face had been. Outside, the Krath ships continued their slow destruction of everything she loved. But for the first time in 3 days, she felt something other than despair. She felt afraid. Not of the Krath. Not anymore. She was afraid of what was coming to save them. Warlord Gask stood on the command deck of his flagship and watched his empire grow. Below him, the Vellani homeworld turned slowly in the darkness of space. Smoke rose from its cities like gray fingers reaching toward the sky. His soldiers marched through streets of crystal and glass, gathering the weak creatures who lived there. The larvae pools had already been located. Soon, the harvest would begin. Gask was a massive creature, even by Krath standards. His body was covered in black armor that had grown from his own skin. His forearms ended in claws that could cut through metal. His face was a nightmare of mandibles and teeth and small red eyes that never blinked. He had conquered 11 star systems. He had killed millions. He had made entire species kneel before him and beg for death. And now, a single human ship was flying toward him. Warlord, said his communications officer, the human vessel has entered our sensor range. It is a small frigate. Very old. No visible weapons. Gask made a sound that was almost like laughter. It was wet and clicking and terrible. One ship? The Deathworlders send one ship against my armada? It appears so, Warlord. They insult us. Gask turned to his generals, who stood in a row behind him. Send 3 destroyers to intercept. Tear the ship apart slowly. Let the Vellani see what happens to those who seek outside help. The generals bowed and gave the orders. On the sensor screen, 3 Krath destroyers moved toward the human vessel. The frigate did not change course. It did not speed up or slow down. It simply kept coming, steady and patient, like a predator that knows its prey cannot escape. The first destroyer opened fire. Then its signal vanished. Gask stared at the screen. One moment the destroyer was there, broadcasting its attack patterns. The next moment, nothing. No explosion. No distress call. Just silence. What happened? Gask demanded. Unknown warlord. We are attempting to. The second destroyer's transmission cut off mid-word. The officer who had been speaking simply stopped, replaced by a sound that Gask did not recognize at first. It was a scream, but not like any scream he had heard before. It was the sound of something dying in a way that should not be possible. The third destroyer managed to broadcast for longer. Gask heard voices shouting about boarding pods, about something moving through the corridors, about soldiers being taken apart in the darkness. He heard gunfire, and then he heard the gunfire stop. He heard a voice begging in the Krath language, "Please, I surrender." Please, and then he heard nothing at all. The bridge of his flagship was silent. Warlord, the communications officer whispered, "The human ship is still approaching. It will reach the planet's surface in 4 hours." Gask said nothing. For the first time in many years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt uncertain far below. On the edge of the planet's atmosphere, a small figure sat alone in the cargo bay of a ship called the Patient Wolf. Captain Doan was not a large man. He was lean and quiet, with black hair cut short and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His hands moved with mechanical precision as he cleaned his combat blade, sliding the cloth along the edge again and again. The blade was old. It had belonged to his father and his grandfather before that. It had killed many things. It would kill many more today. The door to the cargo bay opened, and a Villani stepped through. She was young, with wings the color of morning sky. Her name was Bora, and she had volunteered to guide the human to her world. She regretted that decision now. "Captain," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "we have entered the atmosphere. The Krath control most of the major cities. Their main base is in the capital." Doan did not look up from his blade. "How many soldiers?" 40,000 on the surface. Maybe more on the ships. Officers? Several hundred. The warlord himself is still in orbit. Doan nodded slowly. He slid the blade into its sheath on his back and stood. For the first time, Bora saw the scars that covered his arms and neck. They were not random wounds. They were patterns carved with purpose, marking him as something other than human. On his neck, she saw a brand, a circle of fire containing a symbol she did not recognize. "Captain," she said, "the council files say that humans feel fear, that your species evolved fear for survival. But I cannot sense any fear from you. Not even a little." Doan looked at her. His eyes were empty, like windows into a room where nothing lived. "I burned that out of myself," he said. "A long time ago." "How?" "You do not want to know." He walked past her to the cockpit, where he looked out at the burning world below. Cities in flames. Ships in the sky. An entire civilization being eaten alive by monsters who thought they were the strongest things in the galaxy. "When we land," Doan said, "you will take this ship and leave. Go into orbit and wait." "Wait for what?" 3 days. Bora stared at him. 3 days? "Captain, there are 40,000 Krath soldiers down there. You cannot possibly." 3 days, Doan repeated. "If I am not finished by then, I will be dead. Either way, you will not want to be here for what comes next." "What? What is going to happen?" Doan picked up a bag from the floor. It was heavy and made sounds when it moved, metal sounds, sharp sounds, sounds of things meant to hurt. He put it over his shoulder. "War," he said simply. "Not the kind your people know about. Not the kind with armies and battles and honor. The kind that happens in the dark. The kind where fear is the weapon and nightmares are the ammunition." He looked at her with those empty eyes. "The Krath came here to harvest your children. They think they are predators. They think they are the most dangerous things on this planet." He opened the landing ramp, and wind rushed into the ship, carrying the smell of smoke and death. "They are wrong." Then he walked out into the fire and disappeared into the night, And Bora understood at last what the humans had sent to save her people. Not a soldier, not a hero, a monster, and God helped the Krath when it found them. The eastern garrison fell silent on the first night. 2,000 Krath soldiers were stationed there, veterans of a dozen conquests, warriors who had bathed in the blood of lesser species. They had walls of steel and guns that could cut through stone. They had sensors and guards and patrol routes that covered every inch of ground. None of it mattered. The power went out at midnight. The backup generators failed 30 seconds later. Communications died shortly after that. For 3 hours, the garrison existed in total darkness, cut off from the rest of the invasion force. When the sun rose and reinforcements arrived, they found the gates standing open. Inside, 2,000 Krath soldiers lay dead. General Vecht was the first to enter. He was an old warrior, scarred and hard, and he had seen terrible things in his long life. But what he saw in that garrison made his legs weak and his heart stutter in his chest. The bodies were not simply killed. They were arranged, placed in patterns across the courtyard, the barracks, the command center. Some were missing parts. Others had been changed, twisted into shapes that should not be possible. And on every wall, written in Krath blood, the same word repeated over and over: run. What did this? Vecht whispered. His voice sounded strange in the terrible silence. No one answered. No one knew. Warlord Gask received the report 3 hours later. He sat in his command chair and listened to General Vecht describe the slaughter, and he felt his certainty cracking like ice beneath weight. One human, he said. You are telling me that one human did this. There were no other life signs in the area, Warlord. No ships, no vehicles. Just one set of footprints leading away from the garrison. Vecht's image flickered on the holographic display. His face was gray with shock. Sir, I have fought many species. I have seen many forms of combat. But this was not combat. This was a message. Then we will send a message of our own. Gask stood, his massive form casting shadows across the bridge. Deploy the hunters. Every elite squad we have. Find this human and bring me his head. The hunters went out that night. 50 teams of the Krath's finest killers, armed with thermal trackers and psionic sensors and weapons that could level buildings. They spread across the planet like a net, searching for a single human in a world of fire and ruin. One by one, they went silent. Team after team stopped reporting. Some sent final transmissions, screams, sounds of violence, voices begging for help that never came. Others simply vanished, as if they had never existed at all. By the second night, Gask had lost 1,500 hunters. The survivors began to refuse orders. They sat in their quarters and would not move. When their commanders demanded answers, they spoke of shadows that moved wrong, of sounds in the darkness, of the feeling of being watched by something that was not afraid. He's just one creature, Gask roared at his generals. One small, fragile human. How can you not find him? But the generals had no answers. They had tried everything: satellites, drones, tracking animals, psionic scans. Nothing worked. The human was there, and then he was not, appearing and disappearing like smoke, killing and moving on before anyone knew what had happened. On the third night, Gask received a transmission on his personal channel. This should have been impossible. His channel was encrypted with codes that would take 100 years to break. Only his most trusted officers knew how to access it. The hologram flickered to life, and a human face appeared. He was not impressive to look at. Lean and plain and utterly calm. His eyes were dark and empty and horrible. Warlord, the human said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. My name is Captain Doan. I believe we need to talk. Gask felt rage rise in his throat. You dare. I am giving you one chance, Dohan continued. as if Gask had not spoken. Leave this world. Take your ships. Take your surviving soldiers. Go back to wherever you came from and never return. One chance? Gask laughed, but the sound was hollow. You have killed a few thousand of my warriors, human. I have 40,000 more. You cannot fight an army. I am not fighting your army, Dahun said. I am hunting it. Something in his voice made Gask's blood slow in his veins. Check your garrison counts, warlord. Right now. Gask waved a hand, and his tactical officer pulled up the numbers. The color drained from the officer's face. Sir, we have lost 60% of our ground forces. Impossible. It is not impossible, Dahun said. It is math. 200 soldiers per night, taken quietly, removed from their posts without anyone noticing. Your army is bleeding, warlord. And it will keep bleeding until there is nothing left. Gask stared at the human on the screen. He had conquered 11 star systems. He had broken species who thought they were unconquerable. He had never felt fear since he was a child. He felt it now. What are you? He whispered. No one's expression did not change. I am what happens when peaceful species have no one else to call. I am the nightmare your ancestors warned you about. I am the reason the galaxy learned to fear the dark. He leaned forward slightly, and his empty eyes seemed to fill the entire screen. Leave this world, warlord, or I will take it from you. One soldier at a time, one night at a time. And when I am finished with your army, I will come for you. The transmission ended. Gask sat in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to his generals, and his voice was not steady. Double the guards. Triple them. I want lights everywhere. I want sensors on every corner. I want no darkness anywhere on this planet. But even as he gave the orders, he knew it would not be enough, because somewhere out there, in the ruins and shadows of a world he was trying to conquer, something was hunting him, and it was getting closer. By the 5th day, the Krath invasion had become the Krath collapse. Soldiers refused to sleep. They stood at their posts with their weapons raised, staring into every shadow, jumping at every sound. Some had stopped eating. Others had stopped speaking entirely, sitting in corners with blank eyes and trembling hands. 3 generals had killed themselves rather than wait another night for the human to come. The Lani watched from their hiding places in the forests and mountains. They saw their enemies falling apart, watched the mighty Krath warriors become hollow shells of fear and exhaustion. It should have made them happy. Instead, it made them afraid. What is he doing to them? Whispered Ambassador Telly from her shelter in the northern caves. Bora, who had stayed in orbit against orders, watched the planet through her ship's sensors. She intercepted Krath transmissions every hour, listening to voices she would never forget. Please, one soldier begged into his communicator. Please send extraction. He was here. He was right here, standing over my commander's body, just standing there, looking at me. Then he was gone. Just gone. I cannot stay here. I cannot. The transmission cut off. Another came in minutes later, this one from a medical station. The wounded are dying, a Krath medic said, her voice shaking. Not from their injuries, from fear. Their hearts are stopping. They see him when they close their eyes. They hear him breathing in the darkness. They cannot. Static. Bora turned off the receiver. Her wings were pressed flat against her back, and her whole body was cold. He is not just killing them, she reported to Ambassador Telly. He is destroying their minds, making them break from the inside. Down on the surface, Captain Dawn moved through the ruins of the capital city. He had not slept in 5 days. He did not need to. Sleep was another thing he had learned to burn out of himself, back in the program. Back when they had rebuilt him into what he was now, a machine made of flesh. a weapon that did not stop. He walked through streets that had once been beautiful, past towers of crystal, now shattered and dark. The Krath had destroyed so much, killed so many. He had found the nursery pools on the second day, found what was left of them, and something had moved in his chest that he had thought was long dead. Anger. Not the hot anger that made people stupid. The cold kind. The patient kind. The kind that did not fade until the work was done. Tonight, he was going to end this. The Krath Command Center was a massive structure in the heart of the city. It had walls of reinforced metal and hundreds of guards and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Warlord Gask had retreated there 3 days ago, surrounding himself with his most loyal soldiers, waiting for the human to come. Dohan did not attack the command center. Instead, he found the water supply. He found the communication relays. He found the generators. One by one, he took them apart. Not quickly, slowly, methodically. He let the Krath know that their water was gone, then waited for them to feel thirst. He let them know that their communications were dead, then waited for them to feel alone. He cut their power in stages, letting the darkness grow, letting the fear grow with it. By midnight, the command center was an island in a sea of blackness. Gask stood in the central chamber, surrounded by his last remaining soldiers. There were only 100 of them now. The others had fled or died or simply walked into the night and never returned. The great warlord who had conquered 11 star systems was shaking like a child. "Hold your positions," he ordered. "He's just one human. He cannot." The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved. It was faster than anything that Psi should be. Gask heard screams around him, the sounds of bodies hitting the floor, the wet noises of violence. He fired his weapon blindly, and he heard other soldiers doing the same. And then he heard those soldiers stop, one by one. The sounds of fighting died away when the emergency lights finally came on. Gask was alone. No, not alone. The human stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the bodies of 100 Krath warriors. His clothes were wet with blood that was not his own. His blade dripped slowly onto the metal floor. And his eyes, those terrible, empty eyes, were looking directly at Gask. "Warlord," Doan said. His voice was calm, as if they were meeting at a party instead of standing in a room full of corpses. "I gave you a chance to leave." Gask's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, his mandibles clicking weakly, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. "Please," he whispered. "Please, mercy, I surrender. I will leave. I will take every ship and go. Just make it stop. Make you stop." Doan looked down at him. There was nothing in his face. No triumph, no anger, no satisfaction. Just the same terrible emptiness. "You came to this world to harvest children," Doan said. "You burned cities. You killed innocents. And now you ask for mercy." Gask pressed his head to the floor. Yes, please. I will give you mercy," Doan said. "More than you gave them. You will broadcast a retreat order to every Krath ship in the system. You will release every Vellani prisoner. You will provide coordinates to all other Krath holdings so they can be warned. Yes, anything. And then you will go back to your people and you will tell them what happened here. You will tell them that this world and every world like it is now under human protection. That the peaceful species of this galaxy have found their shield." Doan knelt down, bringing his face close to Gask's. "And you will tell them," he whispered, "that if anyone threatens those species again, Earth will not send a fleet. We will not send an army. We will send something much, much worse." His eyes met Gask's, and the warlord saw his own death reflected in that empty gaze. "We will send another monster." By dawn, the Krath fleet was gone, their ships lifted off in chaos. fleeing the planet as fast as their engines could carry them. They left behind their dead, their wounded, their equipment. They left behind a story that would spread across the galaxy like fire, a story about a human, a single human, who had broken the spine of an empire in 5 days. Dalhan stood alone in the ruins of the command center, watching the ships disappear into the sky. His work here was done, but somewhere out there, someone else would need him. Someone else would be suffering. Someone else would send out a cry for help, and when they did, he would answer, because that was what monsters were for. The Galactic Council met 3 weeks after the fall of the Krath invasion. Representatives from 100 species filled the great chamber, creatures of crystal and fire, beings of light and shadow, minds that existed in clouds of gas, and bodies that swam through the vacuum of space. They had come from every corner of the galaxy, summoned by events that none of them could ignore. The Krath Dominion had collapsed, not slowly, not over years of decline, but in weeks. Word of what had happened on the Villani homeworld had spread faster than light itself, carried by terrified survivors and whispered between star systems. The Krath fleet had scattered. Their warlords had turned on each other. 12 conquered systems had risen up in rebellion, throwing off their chains while their masters trembled in fear of a single human. Now the council wanted answers. Ambassador Telly stood at the center of the chamber, her wings held high. She was not the same creature who had sent that desperate message to Earth. She had watched her world burn. She had seen her children saved by a nightmare. She understood things now that she had not understood before. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying through the vast space. You asked why we contacted Earth. You asked why we reached out to the Deathworlders when the Council had made it clear that such contact was forbidden. She let the silence hang for a moment. The answer is simple. We were dying. Ooh, we were dying. Our children were being taken. And when we called for help, not a single one of you answered. The chamber stirred with discomfort. Some representatives looked away. Others shifted in their seats. The humans answered, Telly continued. They sent one ship, one soldier. And in 5 days, that soldier did what none of your fleets, none of your armies, none of your treaties could do. He broke an empire. He committed atrocities, shouted a Krath representative from the back of the chamber. His voice was thin with fear. He murdered thousands of soldiers. He used terror as a weapon. He stopped a harvest of children. Telly cut him off. He stopped a genocide. He did what was necessary. She paused, and her compound eyes swept across the chamber. Is that not what warriors are supposed to do? No one answered. The Earth representative rose from her seat. Her name was Hannah, and she was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. She did not look dangerous. She did not look like she came from a world of predators and death, but there was something in the way she stood. Something in the set of her shoulders that made the chamber go quiet. My government has asked me to deliver a message, Hannah said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. We have no desire for war. We have no desire for conquest. We want only what every species wants, to live in peace, to trade with our neighbors, to be part of the galactic community. She looked around at the representatives, meeting their eyes one by one. But we also want you to understand something about us. She activated a holographic display. The image of Earth appeared blue and green and white, beautiful and deadly, a world that should have killed everything on it 1,000 times over. This is our home, Hannah said. A world of crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures, and predators on every continent. We did not evolve in paradise. We evolved in hell. And in that hell, we learned things that other species never had to learn. The image shifted. showing human history, wars and plagues and disasters, civilizations rising and falling, violence and survival across 10,000 years. We learned how to fight, Hana continued. How to survive. How to win against odds that should have destroyed us. And in that learning, we developed something unique. She paused. We developed people like Captain Doan. The name fell into the chamber like a stone into still water. We call them berserkers, Hana said. They are volunteers humans who have been trained and shaped and rebuilt for a single purpose. They are our answer to threats that cannot be stopped any other way. They are not pleasant. They are not merciful. They are not heroes in any traditional sense. She met the eyes of the craft representative, who flinched and looked away. They are monsters, and we use them only when there is no other choice. You admit it then, said a tall crystalline being from the council leadership. You admit that Earth harbors weapons of terror. I admit that we have the capability to protect ourselves and others, Hana replied calmly. I admit that when peaceful species are threatened, we will answer their calls for help. And I admit that the help we send may not be pretty. She deactivated the hologram and clasped her hands before her. The Villani asked for aid. We sent it. The threat is gone. The children are safe. If the council has concerns about our methods, we are happy to discuss them. But we will not apologize for what we did. And we will not promise not to do it again. The chamber erupted in arguments, accusations, and fear. But Telly noticed something beneath the noise. She noticed the representatives of small species, the weak ones, the peaceful ones, the ones who had always lived in fear of their stronger neighbors, looking at the human with something other than horror. They looked at her with hope. Far from the council chamber, in a ship drifting at the edge of Villani space, Captain Doan stood in an observation window and watched the stars. The Villani had offered him everything: honors, wealth, a home among their crystal towers. He had declined. He was not made for soft worlds and gentle people. The training that had burned away his fear had burned away other things too. The ability to rest, the ability to connect, the ability to be anything other than what he was, a weapon that did not stop. His communicator buzzed. He looked at it for a long moment before answering. Admiral Yuna's face appeared on the screen. Captain, I have another assignment for you, if you are ready. Dohan's expression did not change. Tell me. The Ilori Collective. They are being overrun by slavers from the Outer Rim. 3 billion civilians. No military to speak of. Yuna paused. They sent a message to Earth yesterday, begging for help. Doan was quiet for a moment. He thought about the Villani children he had saved. He thought about the craft soldiers he had killed. He thought about the person he had been before the program, before the training, before he had been reshaped into a monster. That person was gone now, burned away like so much dead wood. All that remained was the mission. Send me the coordinates, he said. The transmission ended. Dohan turned back to the window. Somewhere out there, 3 billion people were waiting for rescue. Somewhere out there, slavers were laughing because they thought no one could stop them. They were wrong. He walked to the bridge and began plotting his course. Behind him, the stars burned cold and bright, indifferent to the suffering of the small creatures who lived among them. But Dohan was not indifferent. He could not be kind. He could not be gentle. He could not be the hero that stories were written about. But he could do the one thing he was made to do. He could hunt. He could kill. He could be the monster that protected the innocent from other monsters. And as long as there were people who needed saving, he would not stop. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the patient wolf turned toward the darkness between stars. There was work to be done.